Welcome back on the AM show. Time now for us to get into our big stories. And our first conversation is with the chairman of the National Peace Council, Reverend Dr. Ernest Adu-Gyamfi, and he joins us via Zoom. Good morning, Reverend. Thank you for joining us this morning. I think you have to unmute, Reverend.
Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Right. So this conversation is on your activities this election year, how you're planning to maintain, preempt, and all, everything that has to do with peace this election year. How is your outfit doing? Is it busy around this time of year?
Well, we've been busy for the last 3 years, even though the tempo has gone up a little bit since December. We've been quite busy now.
Right. So we know that in Africa, Ghana is one of the most, peaceful countries, or is described as one of the most peaceful countries. And because we have a proper system like the National Peace Council that is legally mandated to handle issues of conflict and all that. But from time to time, we do experience some violence, whether it's from ethnic, religious, political, economic, and so forth. In this election year, how are you preparing to contain election violence?
Thank you for that question. Our preparation for this year's election began from 2021. And since after the last election, the Peace Council convened a high-level meeting in Accra to evaluate whatever happened in the 2020 elections. And out of that, a dialogue for 4 days, we were given a roadmap as to some of the things that we needed to put in place before this election. And so we have been working along all these, on this path, trying to look at all the key issues that were assigned to us. We began with a meeting with the Electoral Commission to look at a few key issues. We've had meetings with the security agencies. We've met with the IGP. We've met with the Chief of Defense Staff. We've provided training and interface between the police, political parties, and civilians. We've had another meeting between the police and the political parties alone so that they could talk among themselves and iron out all the differences and the suspicion. Then we have also had various meetings with the political parties. Currently, since the beginning of last year, we've set up the political party trust building platform where we meet quarterly with the parties to discuss key issues and things that are bothering them. And we all meet, we talk, and we make decisions. Besides that, we've been also having training programs for the political parties. We just had a training for them on the alternative dispute resolution.
Right.
To help them in terms of their own internal issues and how they can resolve them, and the need to find alternative ways of resolving problems instead of going to the courts. We've also had sessions with their women leaders, their youth leaders, and their communicators. And all of these things are meant to tone down the tension in the country. 2 weeks ago, we met with all the Council of Elders of all the parties, also to share with them all the things that we've done so far with the various groups within the party. And then we also had some other programs that were outside the key political party sphere. We were charged with the responsibility of making sure that the NDC returns to IPAC.
Yeah.
It took us 3 years to work on this, and December last year, we were able to get NDC back to IPAC. The other responsibility that was assigned to us was to also find out if we could talk with the judiciary to reduce the time frame for adjudicating parliamentary election cases. We've been able to bring the presidential to about 42 days, even though the last one went over 50 days. And so we went through that negotiation. Finally, the judiciary was able to come up with something. And early this week, we had a meeting with all the parties and key stakeholders also to discuss that with them. Besides that, we've been having meetings across the country. All our regional peace councils are very, very active. And yesterday, we brought together all the regional chairmen of all the regional peace councils to another closed-door meeting to evaluate what they're doing, what we are doing, to share notes so that they can go back and effectively work. So these are some of the things that we...
Right. What are some of the highlights of that meeting? That's closed-door meeting.
Is it between the judiciary and the parties or the peace council?
No, the parties. What are some of the key issues that came out from that meeting?
There were 6 major issues that were presented. The first one was to clarify, in terms of adjudicating of parliamentary election cases, the issue was, when is election declared, or when is the winner declared? Now, in the current regulation, the LI that regulates the election results are declared at the polling station and the constituency. And then the EC must gazette the results within a certain time frame. And after the results are gazetted, you have 21 days to file whatever case you had. Now, the gazetting of the results, even though it's the work of the EC, is actually not in their hands because it's with the Ghana Publishing. It takes time to go through this. And the last election, even though the results were declared around the 8th, 9th, 10th, most of them had been declared, gazetting took place on the 22nd, which means that it was done 12 days after. And then whoever had a case had to have 21 days within that period to file the case. Then the respondent has about 7 days to respond, and then they go through all kinds of things before. By the time the case itself is ready to be heard, we already passed 2 months. So those were critical issues. In this particular meeting, we came to the agreement that if election results are declared at the constituency, and the constituency returning officer has the power to declare the results, then why don't we accept that as soon as the results are declared in the constituency, it is accepted as declared, so that whoever has a grievance can immediately proceed to the court and file or whatever it is and move on. The second thing that we had to look at was how many days, within 21 days and then before all these other processes could start, is it possible to shorten the days? And so the judiciary got a proposal of 7 days. The parties were conflicted. Some of them were suggesting, let's maintain a 21, let's go to 14. But after a lot of discussion, I think the consensus was around the 14 days. But we left to the judiciary to look at it and see how those processes could be worked out.
So then, as it stands now, it means you're waiting on the judiciary to bring you the final conclusion on that matter, whether it will be 21
that's
days
correct.
or 14 days.
We have come to some agreements, but they have to get the bill sent to Parliament, to go through approval processes and all of those. So we have come to certain conclusions, but then they have to tell them into a bill that goes into Parliament. They have to come with the LI and all of those that regulates the election. So we wouldn't say that what we've done now is very conclusive. But we've come to some agreement that we believe that once the parties have agreed to these things, they will talk to their parliamentary candidates, so that once the issue comes to Parliament, they have an understanding of what we have discussed. So we don't keep dragging. We don't have too much time in terms of dealing with these things.
So how soon do you think you can conclude on that matter? Because again, you said you don't have too much time.
From what we've done now, they should be ready to move as soon as practicable. Because we all recognize that we don't have enough time between now and the election period. Getting these things through Parliament, getting your LIs done and all of those things takes a lot of time. So I think they will be moving immediately. That was why we convened this emergency. In fact, the judiciary were on a break, but because of the urgency of the matter, they were ready to come in, and we have 5 of the justices of the Supreme Court who participated in this meeting, which means that they gave priority to the issues that we raised. The second thing was on 7 processes. When somebody files a case, you have to serve on the other person. Now, we noticed that there were challenges in some of these things. Sometimes people evaded service and all kinds of things. At this meeting, the proposal that came up was that when somebody is filing to contest, you give your email address, you give your WhatsApp address, your phone number, and all of those things to the Electoral Commission. It's part of your filing processes. Now, if your phone number is there, your email address is there, your WhatsApp number is there, then that is the means by which you can be reached. So service will not necessarily be a bailiff bringing something into your hands. We can do service by WhatsApp, by email, and once your WhatsApp ticks and we see that it has ticked, it is assumed that you have received it.
Okay.
An email, we can set up services, systems such that once you read the email, it reflects back. We know you've read it.
Yes.
So those are things that we put in place so that people don't start dodging each other and running around where a parliamentary candidate is elected. The case drags through court a year, 2 years. We've had a case where by the time the case was determined, Parliament was over. So we looked at those things. Then we dealt with the length of days in terms of the fact that the current situation, you have 21 days to file, somebody has another number of days to respond and all of those things. So those days were also looked at. And then we tried to shorten them. Instead of, let's say, 7 working days, it's not just 7 days. So weekends are counted as part of the days. So those were major issues. Then looking at all of these things that we have discussed, there's a need to amend the current LIs that are regulating the elections. So those issues were also critically discussed. We came to a certain agreement that all these issues that we are raising now should be effected in terms of the LI to determine how these things are done. Then there was the issue of cases, how the cases are handled. Currently, whoever files a case against an individual, those cases are handled within either the region, the constituency, wherever there's a high court. Now, we notice that there could be a case where one high court may have several cases to handle, and those things could also delay the processes. And so the suggestion was that if no one judge will have more than one case at a time in terms of parliamentary adjudication. So if there's a case in one court and another case comes up, then the case will be handed over to the next immediate high court that is closest to the constituency. And we came up with some formula between the first case and then the next immediate, assuming we had 3 cases, who will be the next person to handle those things, so that we remove the suspicion that the Chief Justice assigned the case to this person because the person has a political interest or whatever it is. So we have given out a certain formula to handle these things.
What's that formula? Please shed a little more light on that. Yeah.
Right. If, assuming something happens in Medina constituency, then we are handling it in the High Court in Medina. If there are 2 or more cases within that enclave, then the next case might probably be handed over to the next court in, let's say, Adenta, which is the closest.
Okay.
If there are 2 more cases, let's move the next case to, let's say, Abokobi. Right. So that no one judge will have more than one case to handle, to ensure that we get these things done as soon as practicable. And by these things that we have done, we're anticipating that latest within 2 months, we should be able to resolve all these parliamentary cases so that we have the full complement of Parliament. The other thing is that the president is supposed to choose some of his ministers and others from Parliament. So when there are all these delays, it affects the proposals from the president in terms of the kind of people that he wants to choose. So we want to avoid some of these things. The last issue we dealt with will not affect this current election, but that has to do with all these proposals that we put in place. The objective was that, is it possible for us to have all these cases resolved before the 7th of January? So by the time a president is sworn in, he has a full complement of people to work with, and then we can move forward. If we want to resolve the case within 2 months, that is up to the end of January, is it possible to shift the election to November so that we have those 2 months to deal with these things? Then by the 7th of January, the president is sworn in, Parliament is sworn in, and we have the full complement of people to work with. But we noticed that bringing this issue now, because EC took it to IPAC, it was shut down. We don't want to create any problem, and we don't have time to go into that debate. But we agree that this is necessary so that after this election, from next year, proposals on these things will start. And we all agreed that all proposals on election reform should start early. Nothing should wait till the last year when people become too suspicious. You are changing the rules because of this or because of that. So early next year, that proposal will come up. Okay. So that by 2028, election will be moved early, maybe to November, so that we can have all these issues resolved before the 7th of December. So these were the 6 key issues that we discussed and came to some conclusions on. So we left it over with the judiciary, and we had very good representation at the meeting. 5 justices of the Supreme Court were there. The political parties were highly represented with their legal participants. And very good, very healthy discussion. And so we believe that going forward, we should be able to have these issues resolved.
Okay. And I want to say good job on getting the NDC to return back to IPAC. I think since they returned, they've attended about 2 meetings already. How challenging was that? It took you 3 years.
Well, it was not an easy thing. You know, after the last election, there were all kinds of issues, accusations, counter-accusations, suspicion, and all of that. And so it took quite a while. The process began with the old administration of the NDC and MPP, Fuson Kofo, Stephen Ketia, Freddie Blay, and others. We began the discussion. We had to take them to a hotel somewhere to talk. They agreed on certain things. We wanted to bring the EC in. It was difficult getting them in. We went forward and backwards. We had to go back door to talk to President Mahama at a certain point. You know, a lot of background work was done. And then until we finally got to a point where we were able to get the NDC back. Right.
So now, does the NPC have a database or conflict zones or a comprehensive mapping or map out of conflict hotspots so you can preempt what conflicts this election?
Yes, we do have that. We did that with the University of Cape Coast. So we have all the hotspots in the country mapped up. But then we keep reviewing these things because conflict is quite fluid. Sometimes something small sparks up somewhere and then suddenly the whole country is in trouble. So we keep reviewing some of these things. And then at certain points, we realize that some of the interventions that we put in minimizes some conflicts in some areas. Then other areas also are heightened. So we keep monitoring these things and we have an eye on all of those things. And we've challenged all the regional peace councils also to monitor these areas carefully. And a lot of work is going on in most of those places.
What does this work look like?
We set up peace ambassadors who are constantly working in there. We do training on violent extremism within those places. We've had training for queen mothers. We have youth. We are currently in secondary schools. We've done training for tertiary institution leaders. We get into all those communities and then we keep working in those places.
Okay. Recently, the flag bearer or the leader of the Movements for Change made some comments, and it received a lot of backlash that it was instigating violence. He said that Christians should vote for a Christian leader. We've seen most of the other parties come out to say that that's a statement that was flawed. We haven't seen anything yet from the NPC. How do you react to a statement like that?
Well, I think on the 15th of November last year, the NPC issued a press release in partnership with the Christian Council of Ghana, the Catholic Bishops' Conference, the Office of the National Peace Imam, and in fact, later on, the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council even wanted to join in that statement, where we told the public that let's avoid religion in politics. The fact is that for anybody who has done peace studies, religion, tribe, ethnicity are major issues in conflict. Once it sparks, these are things that touches the life of people, and therefore they react violently to some of these things. So we've been cautioning the public and all the political players, let us avoid going into that space. Now, when we did it initially, the tension came down, especially immediately after the MPP elected this flag bearer. That issue came up strongly and all over social media. So we had to provide an intervention immediately. It stopped. Now we are seeing pockets of it coming again. So we want to remind the public that we have already issued a press release cautioning the whole public, let's avoid religion coming into our politics. We have lived as one people. I went to school initially with Muslims, friends. I used to tell my colleagues on the Peace Council, I used to live in Asafo, very close to the Ahmadiyya Mosque. My landlord, my mother's landlord at the time was a Muslim. We lived in that house. We played with the kids. Sometimes after we played football, we went to the mosque. I didn't know what they were doing, but I went there with them. When they bow, I bow. When they get up, I get up. We were friends. We've lived together up to this point. Why are we now creating this conflict among ourselves? We've had schoolmates, we have classmates, we have workmates. We've all lived together. So why are we suddenly bringing this thing into our country that can create division? So we want to appeal to all the players. Let us stay focused. What do you want to do for this country? What can you do best? For which reason you are asking people to vote for you? And let's put religion and ethnicity on the side. It will not help anybody.
Well, it's not uncommon that some of these political leaders, party leaders, flag bearers, will still flounce these directions and appeal that you're appealing to them. Should that happen, what punishment could be meted out to them? Are there any repercussions for going contrary to these directives?
The mandate of the National Peace Council does not make room for us to mete out any punishment to anybody or any sanction, right? But as part of the work we've done with the parties, we had political party code of conduct. About a month ago, when we met with the parties, they agreed that we set up a committee to monitor those things. So we are in the process of putting that committee together. At our next meeting, we'll present the names to them for their approval, so that they themselves will call out their own people and tell them that what you're saying is not right. You shouldn't go this way, you shouldn't go that way. We think that if they police themselves, it will be better for us than for us to go back and say, I condemn this and I condemn that. For us, because we are mediators, we try to avoid condemnation, because when issues come up, it will still come back to us to resolve. So we don't want to take a position where it gives an impression as if you are biased when you are adjudicating or trying to mediate between issues. So those are the reasons why we have avoided condemning and all of those things. But again, we must make clear that we don't have the mandate to do that. And so we don't tread into those things. But we are working with Fact Check Ghana now, trying to ensure that when people make statements, sometimes the headlines may be different from exactly what the person said. So we send the information immediately to Fact Check. Fact Check looks at it, gives us a feedback, and then we know that this information is credible. Can we act on it? Sometimes we call the people to our office, we sit down with them and say, look, we are gentlemen, you're honorable people, you want to rule this country, let's not go on this path. Sometimes some of them, by the time they get to the office, they start apologizing. We said this, we didn't mean it, and then all of those things. But we keep cautioning them that, look, let us maintain the peace and stability of our country. It's the most important thing for us to do now.
The National Peace Council has come under scrutiny, not scrutiny per se. Individuals like Sam George have some bad things to say about your stance on this anti-LGBTQ plus bill. Again, like you said again this morning, you are a mediator, so you do not want to take a stance. But this bill or this conversation has become very crucial because a lot of people have differing opinions on the way that the government or the country should go. How do you respond to those who are criticizing your stance on this?
Let's look at a very critical situation. Because of this bill, there's a conflict between the Speaker and the President. Which institution in this country can resolve this apart from the Peace Council? So
well,
if the Peace Council had taken a position,
right.
we need to think about it. If the Peace Council had taken a position, will we have the right to even attempt to mediate? People are calling on us. Why is the Peace Council quiet? Can't you people help to mediate in this matter and all of those? All those discussions are going on. So the council does not take a position. When there is a major conflict, we are the only people can call upon. Right now, is the speaker ready to back up and say that I've withdrawn? Is the president ready to back up? Somebody must come in between. And people are appealing to the Peace Council. Why don't you step into this matter and help resolve this thing? So the public must understand the role of the Peace Council. We just don't get into anything. We sit back. And initially, when I gave that interview on TV3, I said that we don't take a position. If there's a conflict, and someone said, but there's a conflict, I said, we haven't gotten to that point yet. But look at where we are now. You need an institution to step in. And the Peace Council is the only institution that can do this work now. So the public must understand our role. When we say that we don't take a position, it doesn't mean that individuals don't say anything. I said it on doing that interview. Everybody on the council, I represent the Christian Council. Christian Council has spoken. The office of the chief imam has spoken. Traditional rulers have spoken. The Council of Charismatic, everybody has spoken. So why are you forcing the Peace Council to take a step? And the council is made up of representatives of these institutions. But what we've said is that our institutions can say whatever they want to say. But for the Peace Council, we need to remain neutral so that whenever the conflict gets to a certain point that needs resolution, we can step in and deal with the matter. So I think it's important that the public understands our mandate. Ours is not to condemn, ours is not to align. We stay in the middle and do the best we can to resolve whatever impasse we have.
Right. So now there's reports, there have been news about arms and even conflicts tripping down into Ghana from our neighboring countries like Burkina Faso and the rest. I'd like to know what your assessment of that situation is and how you're working to ensure that we still enjoy the peace that we are enjoying in this country currently, and not the influx of these wars on our bordering countries don't, offset the peace we are enjoying.
It's a major threat to our country, and especially for us, because we are not into the issue of arms and all of that. That's the responsibility of the Small Arms Commission. Fortunately, the chair of the Small Arms Commission is also a member of the Peace Council. So once we are doing these discussions, he knows where we're going.
Right.
So we leave that with Small Arms to handle. Ours is to ensure that we continue to provide education on violent extremism, so that we don't get into a situation where everybody starts shooting somebody because of something very trivial. So that is what we've been doing and providing training. Most of our regional peace councils in the border towns are actively working in those areas. Getting to the Bono areas, getting to Côte d'Ivoire, the northern part of the country and all of this. A lot of work is going on. There is very active work going on in all the 5 northern regions. With a lot of support from USAID and several institutions dealing with the issue of violent extremism and how we can tone these things down. So for Peace Council, ours is to talk to people, to help them to understand that we may disagree, but it does not necessarily mean we have to fight. We may disagree, we don't have to pull a gun and pull a machete and kill somebody. So those are the things we keep telling our public. Let us talk, let us resolve our problems, and let us not go on that route. Now, once we don't deal with the violent extremism, it also emboldens these extremists who are outside our country to come in. And those are the things that we keep cautioning our people. Extremists are looking for opportunities to step into a given situation. So when we create the unnecessary tension and the violence, it gives them the opportunity to move in. And right now, the number of arms in this country is frightening. And especially within the northern part of our country. And it's now, in the past, people were looking at having a motorbike as a prestige in some of those places. Now, the prestige is I must have a gun. And how sophisticated my gun is shows where my position is. And these are things that we are talking with our partners in terms of this work to do the best we can. We've spoken to the police, we've spoken to the other security agencies, monitor these things. Let's help to bring it down as much as possible. But we also think that the media must help us in terms of public education in this area so that we can reduce the tension as much as possible.
Thank you so much, Reverend. But we cannot let you go. I cannot let you go without your message of peace to the good people of this country, especially this year, come December. What would that be?
We want to appeal to all Ghanaians election is competition, and for every competition, people will agitate and do all manner of things. But let us remember that in the midst of all the things we are doing, we have only one country to live in. And therefore, in the midst of our competition, let's be careful of what we say, how we say it, so that we can maintain the peace, the stability, the security of our country. It's in the midst of peace that businesses can run. It's in the midst of peace our schools can run. It's in the midst of peace that everybody can go about his or her normal duties peacefully. So let us do the best we can to maintain the peace of our country.
Thank you so much. Reverend Dr. Ernest Adu-Gyamfi is chairman of the National Peace Council. It was a pleasure chatting with you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. Right, so there you have it, but there's still more to come. Right now, Benjamin is coming to do some analysis on data from Global Info Analytics on what people are saying they will do come election 2024. Stay for that conversation.